Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thank you for joining us. We've shot many collector conversations, and every one has been a unique story, but today we have an extraordinary life to retrace, to illuminate, elucidate, and no better man to do the job. He's a Marine, he's a naval aviator, he's an industrial designer, he's a watch collector, he's a commercial pilot, he even writes pilot training curricula. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's an honor. I am humbled to be here amongst, some of the great collectors, some of the great interviews you've done. One of my favorites is Shume's collection. I mean, fantastic. And
well, Shume has an incredible collection,
Yeah.
but you've got a story to give her a run for your money.
good. That's what I hoped.
Well, your story, like mine, starts in New York.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so let's jump to your earliest memory of a watch in your life, because it's a fascinating one.
That's easy. Grew up in upstate New York, born in Manhattan. So I'm a native New Yorker. Dad was a landscape architect, went to Syracuse, but loved the outdoors. He was called the Bronx Indian when he was a kid because he used to tear the leather taxi seats out and make all kinds of quivers and stuff and ride his bicycle and up. So forestry school, I grew up hunting and fishing. And my grandparents moved from Parkchester in the Bronx up and converted an old 19th century barn into a home. And my dad and my uncles helped them. And there was a great little creek there called the Black Rock Creek. Imagine a dense forest and it's dark in the middle of the day. It's that dense, and this babbling brook with rocks and just stuff like that. And my dad is out fishing. Well, my dad had his gold Longines watch that my mom had given him, I believe in '54, okay? So I don't know if it was vintage, it was new then, but it was a gold rectangular Longines watch. He lost the watch while fishing.
Did it go in the water?
Well, he didn't know. Went back with a flashlight, okay, that night, and hours searching where he had been fishing, sees a glint in the water, brings the watch back, and that's my first memory. And that watch is now lost to history. We don't know. When my dad passed a few years ago, we looked high and low for it. We found his little leather lamb he wanted to be buried with and all this other stuff, and we never found that watch. So who knows? My brothers and sister and I choose to believe he buried it with my mom, who passed a few years earlier, so since she gave him that watch. But that kind of got me. I love rectangular watches. I'm always on these antique sites of antique Omegas and Rolex and Hamiltons and Longines rectangular watches, and maybe down the road I'll try to recreate that. But for me, vintage is those are other people's memories. I have my own. I'm vintage. I have my own vintage watch.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the watches that you fell in love with are considered vintage today. But in the 1960s, Rolex watches were on your radar because they appeared in National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Here I am, a little high school in upstate New York. Started out in a place called Maple Hill High School, and I can vividly remember looking at the magazines and seeing the Rolex ads, Submariners and the Daytona. And I was just smitten with the Daytona. I thought that was just the coolest watch ever. Didn't know much about watches, okay? And of course, I knew a little bit about the Omega. And I was 14 during the moon landings. I remember watching that at my grandparents' place up in the woods in New York. And but I remember, Rolex was always on my mind. I knew what a date was. I knew what a date just was. I knew what a Submariner.
Now, you actually studied industrial design as well.
Yeah, I started out in engineering and decided it was just too clinical, and I'm not, I took calculus in high school, but it's just like, designing with a slide rule is not my idea of design. And I come from a very artistic family. My dad's a landscape architect and a very good artist, and I discovered industrial design, and I'm like, oh wow, all these drawings I used to do in high school and all that, I can learn how to do that. And I'm a good model maker, and I had a complete model shop there, so very good with my hands, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I just fell into industrial design, absolutely loved it.
And almost concurrently with that, perhaps inspired by the exploits of the astronauts in the 60s and early 70s, as well as your interest in science fiction, well, maybe I'm presuming too much, but did you think of going into marine aviation when you first
went to
OCS?
I grew up, I'm a history buff too, so all through high school, I'm reading, God is my co-pilot in the Flying Tigers, and especially naval aviation during World War II. And I just fell in love with naval aviation. So when I went to Purdue, I started out in naval ROTC, and not being the brightest crayon in the Crayola big box of 64, I didn't get a scholarship right away, so I was a contract student. And the Marine major there, the MOI, said, hey, Curtis, you're struggling here, you're working 3 jobs, you're putting yourself through college, you know, we only give you $100 a month. Why don't you just continue to work and go to OCS? So I did, you know, I since I had switched majors, I had to cram an extra year into, you know, cram 4 years into 5. So I said, okay, I'm going to take my 2 senior design courses, I'm going to go to OCS in the summer.
So you did OCS, then the basic school, then flight qualifications?
And then flight qualification.
And what kind of watches were you wearing at this point in your life?
I can't even remember. I believe it was my Seiko, I think it's a 6903. It basically is a 36 millimeter kind of integrated basic, you know.
A very basic watch.
Very basic watch. Date 8. I believe it's a date 8. It might be just a date.
So you're kind of like me. You liked watches before the military, but you didn't actually own a bunch of them.
No.
But
I loved automatics because I thought that was cool. The fact that,
I mean,
that's what kept your watch going.
How do you not fall in love with that?
Yeah, exactly.
But you did start to open the door early on, and some of the watches on the table represent those early steps forward.
Yeah.
So your progression once you were in the military, you were stationed in the Pacific, you were out in Okinawa, you were making trips to Hong Kong. How did your watch, well, if not collecting life, your watch-aware life step forward at that point?
Yeah, and like I said, I'd like to refer to myself as an enthusiast. So I believe I had left that watch at my parents' house in New York, so I didn't have a watch. I'm in Okinawa at the Mercantile Exchange at Camp Butler, and I see this watch, okay?
In Okinawa?
In Okinawa, okay? And I'm like, wow, I wear flight suits and camis all the time. This is perfectly color coordinated, okay? And it's really cool. It's a Seiko Pulsemeter digital watch. I still have the original band for it here, okay? And so I bought 3 of them.
Even the Velcro still works.
Even the Velcro still works, okay? So I bought 3 of them, black one for my brother, a green one for my brother, this one, and I had a green one, okay? And I had that for a year. 6 months in Okinawa, came back in 83, 84, I go back for another 6 months, and I had this watch with me, and I lost it. And I knew it was in my BOQ room because I could hear it beep once a day and never could find it. And no kidding, okay? You know, what's the difference between a sea story and a fairy tale? Fairy tale starts once upon a time. The sea story starts, this is no shit, okay? So.
You see, he was a Marine.
Yeah.
Navy
So anyway,
Marine.
I couldn't find it. I'm freaking out. I'm like, and at the time, everybody, 20% of my squadron, we'd all gotten dive trained, okay, in the squadron, and 20% of the guys there, 7 out of 35 pilots had a Submarner. And I already loved Rolex. I'm like, cool. And everybody said, Kurt, man, get to Hong Kong, because the British Military Exchange at the China Fleet Club in Hong Kong sells 50% off. The Navy Exchange...
An authorized dealer.
Artland Watch Company, which is still in business today in Hong Kong, was the vendor there, okay? And so off on an airplane we go, and we're in Hong Kong. We met up with 2 other Marines. One in Craig Walworth, who I'm still in contact with today, he's a Harvard grad, and another Marine and his wife, and we just did the typical shop. That's back in Hong Kong when you could actually shop. I mean, Craig took a small Cougar down and had a ring made for like next to nothing at 18 karat gold. I had suits made. Gina and I had a couple jackets, leather jackets made. And so it's December 26th. I walk into Artland Watch Company.
1983.
1983. And I'd been watching the Navy, the base exchange system, Far East Exchange System is what it was called, all in the Far East. And they were advertising a 10% off Christmas sale.
For watches, for Rolex.
For watches, for everything, yeah. But Rolex specifically.
When you could get Rolex at a base exchange.
Yes. Back then you could get the Rolex at a base exchange. They actually had a gold date. And I didn't realize it was 36 millimeters. And with these hams, you know, it wouldn't have really looked that good on me. But so I'm like, hey, $4,000 for a gold date, 10% off. And I didn't realize the 50%, I didn't factor that back in. So I walk into the AD, I'm looking at subs. I quickly decided that the Daytona was cool, but a little bit too small for me. I'm like, you mean it's not automatic, it's manual wind? Are you kidding me? And it would have been what back then, a 62, 63 maybe?
Yeah, and it would have been 37 millimeters.
Yeah, 36 or 37, yeah. So a little small for me. And I love the sub, but I remember talking to Gal, I said, you know, I'm getting dive trained, but I'm a pilot. Doesn't Rolex make a pilot watch? She walks away, she comes back and shows me this, and I'm like, wow, that is gorgeous. And I bought it on the spot. So These were about 900 in the U.S. back then, 50% off, 450 minus 10%, 405 out the door, no tax, Hong Kong.
So you bought that watch for $405.
$105. Now,
Look, even with inflation, that's a deal.
have you ever been asked, is that Rolex wheel real? You know what my answer is? Well, I frickin' paid $400 for it in Hong Kong, and it better be real. And I watched people's reaction. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious.
I mean, the amazing thing about it is you wore that watch for, what, 40 years?
Well, 24/7, 365 for 22 years.
Okay.
I showered with it
So it was
every
your
day.
only watch for
My
22
only watch.
years?
Yeah, because I lost that all over the Seiko, and I lost this watch, so this was my only watch. And I just never took it off.
So you've owned it for 40, you wore it for 22, your only watch all the time, never serviced, and the watch is mint. It's
No,
not
I had it
gouged.
serviced in Pensacola, because back then Rolex recommended 2 years. And like an idiot, I took it in.
So how many times was it serviced between 1983 and 2015 when it
Well,
was
the
not
last
doing too
18
well?
was the last 4 services
Okay, so that's 4 services from...
in 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, a testament to the watchmaking.
Yeah.
But I've got to be honest, most watches that go through even 4 services don't have the razor sharp lugs that yours has. How did you keep it so mint? Even the bracelet feels like it's got like a preternatural integrity to it.
Yeah.
The only thing that I know you've replaced, the bezel insert and the crystal, that's fine. But
Yeah.
how do you keep the case so straight?
Well, I own nice things, and my dad taught me early on. We didn't have a lot of money, 5 kids, but my dad would take us to Tiffany's every year in New York and all that. So I had appreciation for fine things, and you know, all my hunting gear, my camping gear, all that, my bicycles. You take care of stuff.
Yes.
Flight suit you wear, you got a covered cuff with Velcro. I wore it underneath my cuff. I mean, the cockpit of a Huey and a Cobra is not very forgiving. It's aluminum and sharp edges and banging stuff. You got the collective and the seat down here.
And for the record, just
Yeah.
for those who don't speak helicopter, those are Huey transports as well as gunships, Cobras. So those are the 2 types that you
Yeah.
flew.
Yeah. So I would keep it covered all the time, as much as practical. Even when I flew, and I can remember loading baggage for, I was flying G4s, I'm loading baggage for some celebrity in Hollywood, and I can remember the bezel getting completely ripped off, loading baggage, and I just grabbed it and put it back on and took it to my little watchmaker. But it's never been a Rolex, and that's a testament to why it's still so original. I would always take it to either the local jeweler or an independent, you know, so I had it serviced initially at 2 years and I waited another 10 years, and then it's kind of like a 10-year interval. And must have gotten a bad service at one point because it just stopped working one day. And so this was after 9/11, couldn't afford to get it serviced, so it sat for a couple years until 18 when I could get it done. And I've got a couple great guys in San Diego. So I had it serviced in 2018, brought it in. He goes, Kurt, what do you want, value you want to put on this when I do the service? I go, I don't know, what do you think, $4,000? He goes, yeah, that sounds good. And he's just a watchmaker. He's a little old man,
And
watchmaker.
these right here are the original box and paper sets.
Original box and papers, 2 original bezel inserts, okay? All the original brochures. Somewhere there's the original link and the original receipt from Heartland Watch Company. But the paperwork's in there. This is a 1.89 serial number, late 83. So they probably had a 16760 in the
At the
store.
time.
They wanted to get rid of this one, so she showed me this. But I love it, you know.
So your estimate on that watch went from 4,000 to what during the service?
I called them up and said, put a 1 in front of the 4. Because I had done some research on the internet, and I'm like, I'm looking at one pilot owns 16 750s and 16. And for people that don't know, I love the 16 750 and the early ones. So 80 through 83, this is identical to a 1675, which is a much more collectible watch. But and the only way you can tell, this has got the matte dial that the 1675 has, and the only way to tell the difference, and you probably know this, Tim, is the stack up of the GMT and the hour hand is reversed. Other than that, it's identical, but it's hacking seconds. Now, the later 1675s had hacking seconds, but it's 4 hertz, it's 100 meters, and it's quick set date.
Yes.
And to me, I looked at the GMT-Master too, and I'm like, it doesn't have a quick set date.
No. I mean,
No, that was more
I'm with
valuable
you.
to me, okay, than that. And so it's like I thought about getting the GMT-Master too. And I'm like, well, I love this watch. It's got a good story and blah, blah.
You see, I see a million watches, so I don't like say, oh, is this real? I say, oh my gosh, I've never seen one preserved like this.
Yeah.
So this, if you told me that sat in the box for 40 years, I would have believed you because it's that good.
Yeah, no. And like I said, I have no qualms about polishing a watch. I see these young kids out there that want to buy this 16710 or these old watches, never been polished and all that. Oh, I'm never going to polish it. I'm going to wear it. It's like, why don't you just buy a really beat up old one, get a great price on it, send it to a place that does great laser welding, great restoration, had it done, and wear the crap out of it. And it's like Jay Leno says, restore a car till it's 1,000 points and then drive it till it's 60 and re-restore it. It's like it's a tool. My watches are tools.
So now between the point where you really started to expand your collection around 2018, 2019, when you discovered, social media.
Social media. I went down the rabbit hole big time.
What watches joined the collection in between the 1983 GMT-Master and the advent of your watch collecting?
I went crazy over 2 years. I really did. I just was like, wow, you can actually collect watches. Now, to go back on this story, which makes this story even better, because I got such a good deal on this, I went back the next day to Artland Watch Company. And I said, how much for the Sub and the Daytona? All three. She goes, about $1,500. And I'm like, I'm worried about customs coming back in Okinawa. And I'm like, who the hell needs 3 Rolex watches?
Can you imagine?
Okay. So I'd probably have either 16800 or a 5513, a 6263. I actually thought about the Daytona. Well, I'll just put it in my little safe box and just wear it on special occasions. I actually thought about that.
So guys, if you're going to cry that he got this for $405, just remember the ones he didn't buy.
Well, you talk about regrets, and I collect quotes. One of my favorite quotes is, "Never look back. You're not going that way anymore."
Yeah, I call it non-buyer's remorse when you've got a watch you wish you'd bought,
yes,
rather than a watch you bought and wish you hadn't purchased.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now in 2018, you're getting towards the end of your career as a commercial pilot. You're still Marine instructor, you're still involved in naval aviation as a contractor, but you're getting towards the end of your term as a commercial pilot. Now you've got a little bit more money, you've got some time to think about building out a collection, you've discovered watch social media channels and YouTube. What was the original idea to start buying some of the watches you were aware of but never attempted to buy in the past?
And then discovering new ones and going, wow, I never knew about this. I never knew what Day Bethune was or FP Journe, and I knew Patek, I knew Longines, Timex, most of the biggies. Helped my brother buy a Tag Heuer back in the day and all that. But the really high-end stuff, and Blancpain wasn't on my radar. Breguet, which I love Breguet watches. So and I love history, I love research. So I just not only watched a lot of great YouTube videos, but did a lot of historical research. I don't know if you saw my article on the most iconic pilot's watches of all times. And I've got a list of 12 that you can still buy today.
And you've got a couple of them.
I've got a couple of them. And, like you said, when you first started collecting, you kind of went in with a plan. And I'm like, should I collect all those watches? And I'm like, no. I love all these watches, but do I really want to limit myself? Why don't I just buy what I love and what I'm going to use? Not to collect, but to use. So early on, I'm like, I knew I wanted a Speedmaster. My buddy, who's a watch collector, he's a retired Navy senior chief.
Yes.
ASW P3 guy. He kind of got me into the first all watch box, and he used to collect tags, and he had his original from A school in Pensacola, 73 Speedmaster that his dad bought him when he graduated A school. Okay, and he still has that watch, and we get together, we both wear our Speedies, and he's like, Kurt, you just get the Speedy. And his watchmaker, who's my watchmaker, said, Kurt, just get the Hesalite. You'll love it. And by the way, Hesalite on this, I have no problems with that.
You were comfortable with a Hesalite or a thermoplastic because you'd lived with this for a couple of decades. Yeah.
Whitening toothpaste. There was no polywatch back then.
Exactly.
At least I didn't know about it.
No, and even to this day, I use pencil erasers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you got into the Speedmaster profession. Yeah. Now you've got your watch.
That was a birthday present for my lovely wife. She made me wait for it. Delayed gratification.
But no, this is a fun watch too, because it was undoubtedly something that had been on your radar forever.
Every time we go to Santa Barbara or we go someplace, I'd go in a jewelry store and I'd say, I want to see the moon watch. I want to see and I would just look at it and go, God, but that's like $1,200. I can't afford that. I was got a family, I'm restoring cars. I'm doing other things. Building a watch collection wasn't on. It's like, down the road, that'd be cool to have that watch.
Just a little diversion real quick.
Yeah.
What car projects do you have going now?
Finishing up, I got to get her Sprite restored. If I don't, she's going to sell it out from under me. She's got a very original 60 bug-eye Sprite with 45,000 original miles. But my big Healy is just about finished. I've got a couple nittly little things I got to get finished. But you've seen my car. It's been on Talking Time. It's a birth year car. It's my 55 Austin Healy 100 with the fold-down windshield and just a Grail car. It's an icon.
And so if you want to see this car, check out Talking Time with Tim Masso on Facebook.
Yeah, and then my Instagram, 1955 Healy 100, Healey. Yeah.
So now the process continues. You're going a little bit more up market now. You're starting to achieve these gold watches. You've got a great story surrounding this Rolex Sky-Dweller.
Okay.
They have to hear. The world needs to know this.
There was a lot of watches in between, which we'll go back to.
But we're going to jump all over the place.
We're going to jump all over the place. So anyway, I'm getting August 2020. I turned 65. Got to retire. So we have actually a boutique in San Diego. And so I already had a good relationship with just going down talking to one of the sales guys there. We just kind of hit it up. And we just go in and talk for an hour. And just talk life, talk this, talk that, and I'd wear my Pepsi in. He's like, oh, that's cool, Kurt. That's a great watch, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, any chance I can get, and by this time, this was on my radar because once it went to steel, and once they got rid of the Roman numerals and the Arabics and had the marker hands, I'm like, gosh, that thing is gorgeous. And then I really dove into the ring command bezel. And I loved Datejust to begin with. So Datejust aesthetics, GMT, my favorite complication, and I wanted a calendar watch, perpetual or annual. And I'm like, this is great. So I had kind of narrowed down my choices for a retirement watch to the GLC Master Ultra Thin Perpetual in steel, the Dr. Strange watch with the silver dial. And they were both about the same price. And this kind of won out. And they promised me, Kurt, we will have you a black or white dial steel by your retirement. Well, never did. And it's like, you just can't wait. You can't always trust. And so kind of digress here a little bit. We're on our anniversary trip to New York City in 19. And of course, I'm looking at, by that time, I'm totally immersed in watch culture. And I spent an hour at Rolex, an hour and a half at JLC with my wife.
And she
Nancy.
puts up with all that.
Yeah, she puts up with that. Yeah, she doesn't want a Reverso. I've been trying to get her a Reverso for years now, and A. Langanzona, and I walk into FB Journe, and the salesman was a great guy. And they go, one of my Grail watches is Centrograph Silveron, and you probably don't have one, but I think it's been discontinued. And he smiles and says, wait here. And he walks out with a silver dial one. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, holy crap, I can have this watch. And I'm looking at the price, and it was, pretty steep. But, my wife's pretty cool. She kind of looks at me and goes, you want it? You want it, And I'm like, well, I once again, I rationalized to myself. I really want that Sky-Dweller. Yeah, I may get it, bird in the hand, but that's a lot of money, Yeah. Chronograph, am I really going to wear it? It's white gold. It's going to need servicing. I look at servicing,
Yes.
And on all this other stuff, and I'm like, hey, 70 grand for that watch out the door, I'm just going to pass. Well, literally 10 days later, I'm in Hong Kong at the flagship boutique there in right downtown Hong Kong, Dixon's. I walk in, I'm talking to the sales gal there, and she goes, if you think it's bad in the States, every Rolex has got a 100 to 200 person waiting list. Blah, blah, blah. But, by the way, we just got a black dial two-tone in an hour ago. And there's a guy coming down, but I told him I wouldn't hold it, and he'll be here in 2 hours. Okay, do you want the watch? I called my wife, she said, buy it. And so I had turned down the white dial two-tone about 2 months prior, and it just didn't speak to me. Plus, I was running for a flight, and I didn't want to delay the flight. And I'm like, I'll just keep waiting. We'll see what happens in San Diego. And I bought this on the spot, and I love the black dial. I've since tried on the blue dial. I don't love it as much. And then I found this bespoke strap maker in Germany, and he was one of the few guys that would do an integrated kind of watch strap.
And it really has been sculpted along the end. This is not just a straight bar.
Yeah,
across
people
the
don't
lens.
realize that when you got a Rolex Sky-Dweller on a strap, there is a
There's a little insert.
A
to
little
close the
insert
gap.
there that you cannot put a bracelet on. Okay, Rolex wants to sell you a strap and a strap only, and I don't even know if you can take that little insert out. So I think you might be stuck with either a bracelet or a rubber for the rest of your life. And this is why I said I still have my two-tone, oyster bracelet, and but I think this tones it down, and I just love this ostrich.
And you've got it on
leather
this
strap.
D9 ostrich strap and
Yeah.
clasp to match.
Yeah, and I didn't want to use the clasp, scratching it up and all that. And I actually like this is basically an Omega style deployant.
And it's gorgeous because, I mean, normally when you get ostrich leather, you can see all of the marks where
Yeah.
the quills were
Yeah.
originally part of the hide. This is very different. This is almost like a hybrid of an alligator
It
and
looks like,
lizard.
yeah. People confuse it with alligator, and I love, this is John Glantz at Dangerous Nine, and he's a former Californian, lives in Germany, just a great company, great guy to work with. And I don't know where on the skin or where on the hide he gets these, but I just love the pattern. And I'm gonna get some more. He does Swiss ammo pouch leather straps for Rolex. They are amazing. And he does all kinds of exotic leathers, and that he's reasonably priced, considering, what they are. And I just love it on this leather strap. It's just like once I went, where's my Speedmaster? Yeah. I love the bracelet. I see guys complain all the time about, there's no micro adjustments. I don't know what they're talking about. I guess 7.6 inch wrists, 7.7 sometimes. It's like, I've never had a problem with strap and adjustments and all that. It's not a big deal. And I just, this was another Hong Kong pickup. Great deal, no tax in Hong Kong, and the factory leather alligator on the Omega deployant, and I absolutely adore it on that. I'll put it on the bracelet in the hot summer, but in the wintertime it lives on that.
So the Rolex Submarner was on your radar for a really long time. National Geographic ads in the 1960s. It was the wardroom standard when you were in naval aviation, and eventually you had to make that leap. How did you leap to this example?
Okay, so early 19, I'm looking at completing and getting that watch that I should have bought along with my GMT in 1983. And I really like the aesthetic of the no date. And so I started looking around locally in San Diego and found a 1985 5513 at a local jewelry store. It had been bought there new in 85, serviced there its entire life. I subsequently found out it had been polished once at that shop. And, it was a pretty pricey watch, but in really good shape. In fact, the watchmaker who was there, I asked him, has this ever been polished? It doesn't look like it has. And if it has, it's been very light. He goes, good eye. I polished it once 25 years ago. Very nice watch. I don't think it had box and papers, but a little poly watch, or I would have had it serviced and since it had been polished once, I probably would have had it, repolished, because it didn't need much. Everything was there. It was solid. Really beautiful watch, but I'm like, it's got a bidirectional bezel. It's old school, and instead of the spidering of the dial, that's
Yeah, the
really
crazing.
Okay, it had corrosion bubbling around the white indices, which didn't look cool. Okay, so instead of the cool spidering, I got this uncool corrosion, and I'm like, okay, and it's like, do I really need another vintage, cheap bracelet, watch with somebody else's memories? Why don't I get my own memories? And I'm like, $7,500 for that new, or $12,000 for a vintage, really cool. And so I said, let me see if I can get one of these. Fast forward to about March of 2020, I'm in Reno at a convention, non-watch related, talking with a gentleman at a booth, and he's like, hey, I had my Speedmaster on. He had a nice two-tone date just. And he goes, oh, you ought to go see this jeweler over here. The gal is the president and CEO of 4 jewelers in the Midwest. And she got me a Hulk, she got me this, she got me that. Well, I went over there, met her and her husband, lovely young lady, and family business. She goes to Rolex a couple times a year, she really knows. And I just started talking Rolex and watches with her. I said, you got to answer the questions that everybody is asking about Rolex, about wait lists about this, what's popular, what's not. And at least in her jewelry stores, I said, what are the hardest 5 to get? And she goes, Blue Dial Sky-Dweller, Pepsi, Batman, Hulk, and the Daytona was 5. I'm like, really? So after an hour and a half and just talking watches, she goes, Kurt, is there anything you'd like? I said, can you get me a no-date sub? This is knowing this woman an hour and a half. I go, can you get me a no-date sub? She goes, sure. Give me a month or two. It's bringing in the COVID, March of 2020. It took her a few more months, but she got this. She calls me on August 31st. Well, what happened September 1st, 2020? The 124060s came out. So on the last day of the 114060s, she calls me and says, I got your watch.
I was going to say, this is a bubble watch.
Yes.
The very end of the previous generation Note.
Exactly. So I said, oh my God, that's great. I said, is it the new one or the old one? She goes, it's the old one. I said, that's fine. I'd love them both. And she goes, but I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I said, oh God, well, I don't want to. She goes, Kurt, it's in my office. It's your watch. It's safe. Because I said, I'll send you money. I'll send you a credit card. She goes, I'll get back. I'll send you the watch. Write me a check and send it to me. Amazing. I'm like, so she gets back. I get the watch, and it's got the new warranty card with it. Okay.
Did you use the chip on your phone and double check it?
No, I haven't. I haven't. But it's got the new warranty card. It's dated September 5th. Okay, which is when she filled it out, and she had to take the stickers off. And so I got it. I immediately sent her a thank you note, and I think a dozen yellow roses. And to this day, when I called their AD, oh, you're the guy who sent the roses. As a thank you. I mean, who does that? Who sends a $8,000 watch to somebody you met?
But that's what it means to have a
relationship
with the dealer. That's
Yeah.
exactly what people are talking about. That's the best case scenario.
Yeah. So, there's at least one video made or a couple of videos made on this watch, and just the fact that it's just, a good relationship with an AD, and, they're not all bad, and it's not all, and polite, professional, dress well, be nice, and just walk in and build a relationship. And, I'm never going to get a Daytona. I have my name on the list for one just to see if I can get one. Okay? But I don't ever expect to get the call. And do I really want a Daytona? No. I'm over that. I don't need one. I don't really want one. And it's the hype watch. I'll let somebody else who really...
You're a pilot, you're a diver, you're not a race car driver.
No, I'm not. No, though I do use my my Speedmaster and my Bulova for running the Austin Healey around. So anyway, great story on that Submariner.
Now, take me through the process of selecting this watch, because you had a very deliberate and well-planned roadmap to making your decision, and this was not the only watch in the race.
No.
Parmigiani Tonda micro rotor, by the way, guys.
Anytime I buy something, I like to do the research. So an appliance, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, and we've got a Marine friend who used to do the same thing. And so I really do my research, look through, decide what I want. And being a designer, I have very, I don't need to ask somebody, what watch should I get next? I'll tell you what watch I want. I don't really want to hear your opinion, because that's your opinion, not mine, okay? So I will tell you what I want. So I actually started out with 30 watches, okay? And then I built a kind of a spreadsheet with photos of them, and I had a criteria. So it had to be dress watch compatible. And people don't realize, when you go when you wear mess dress blues, that's black or white tie equivalent. So, I'm used to dressing up. I'm used to having
That's Marine Corps.
Marine Corps, but the Navy has an equivalent.
We have the Navy ball.
The Navy ball and all that. And the mess dress are white tie equivalent uniforms. And so I said, okay, so it's got to be, sartorially, it's got to be, correct. And so it's got to be gold. It's got to have a leather band. It's got to be thin or ultra thin. It's got to be sized right. And for me, 37 to 39, 40 millimeters. 37 is looking a little small on me. It's got to be 2 or 3 hand. It's got to be manual wind. Micro rotor is okay, or even a big rotor, as long as it's under 8 millimeter sync. So that 30 went down to 20. Then I watched your videos, okay, your reviews, And I watched Watchfinder and ID guys on theirs. I did a couple good ones on those. And just look, and then what I do is I visualize. I build a virtual watch box where I put, on paper, the watch box with all the things in there, how it'll look, and then I'll post it on the refrigerator in my vault at home, where I keep some of my valuables, and I'll post a picture of it. And I visualize success, you visualize what I want. So it came down to final four. And I wanted white gold, preferably white dial. So it came down to a Breguet Classique 7147, white faux enamel dial. Now I originally wanted the Ginza edition, okay?
Yes.
5175, until a good, very knowledgeable person on Talking Time said, Curtis, that is 10 pieces only for the Japan market. They started at 28,000. You can double that if you can find one. Let me know if you can even find one. So I gave up on that one real quick. But the faux enamel, white faux enamel with the small seconds, love that watch. And I love Breguet. The Saxonia thin in 40. 37 was a little small, but 40 would have been used. The 5124G001 gondola with the
salmon dial.
Salmon dial. I love that watch.
Now, does it make a difference to you that some of these watches are manual wind? Like
No, for a dress watch, that's perfectly in line for a classic, high horology dress watch, a manual wind. But like I said, I didn't rule out the small seconds or center seconds. Didn't want to rule out the automatic either. So I opened it up, and then for some reason I discovered Parmigiani, and I'm just, when a watch all these watches spoke to me, and I said to myself, I could have every one of these watches and be happy. I can't afford every one of them, and I had about a 20 grand limit on price. And it finally came down to, I found the Tonda for a great price. And I said, I can't pass this up. It's a really good price on this watch. New old stock, full factory warranty, and box papers, everything. And bought the watch and never looked back. And absolutely adore that watch.
And you have a very large wrist. This is a compact timepiece.
And it looks amazing, I think, on my wrist.
So Tonda 1950 micro rotor, white gold, but unexpectedly loomed for a dress watch.
Yeah, it's loomed, just the hands, but look at it on my wrist. It really, now, this is 39 millimeters, okay? Tim, what's the size of this watch?
It depends on where you measure it, but I'm going to say that if you measure it at the bezel, it's like 39.5.
39.2.
Ah, there we go.
Okay, that is a 39.2 watch, people. And I'm big on numbers, and I'm big on it's like, no, okay? The 1140-60 is 40.2 millimeters. The 1240-60 is 40.5. It's a lousy 0.3 millimeters bigger. Sorry, stop calling it a 41, okay? Because it's not. And with what they did with the case, they just made it a lot more elegant, a lot more wearable, but it's not a millimeter bigger, okay? It's only 0.3.
That's the great myth of the new 41 millimeter Rolex Submarner. I measured every dimension. I could not find one dimension that was more than 0.7 of a millimeter larger.
Yes.
And the thickness and the lug to lug were
I remember
the same.
you talking about that. Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, forget, you're dead to me, Submariner. I'm like, come on, guys.
So this is 8 millimeters. Some say 7.9. I measure 8. It's 39. It's got that platinum micro rotor, gorgeous movement. And I think, and there's a whole group of us on Talking Time who bought this watch. And it's because it kind of was and still is what Moser was.
Yes.
Okay, just an under the radar watch that was just a fantastic way to get into this beautiful high horology watch. Okay, and I'm hoping with the new CEO at Parmigiani, and they've really changed their designs and all that, this is going to do what H. Moser has done, because it's a wonderful.
And they have capabilities that Moser does not have.
Exactly.
They can make their own hands, dials, cases. The only thing they really go outside their group to source is that gorgeous Hermes strap.
Did you feel how buttery that strap is?
And this is not like, heavily broken in to achieve that softness. It comes.
It was like that. It is amazing.
And it's just a wonderful little piece of like a luxurious flourish on a luxurious flourish.
Hermes is
a stakeholder.
Yeah, they're a stakeholder in it. So it's all in-house. I can't remember. There's only a few. It's like Rolex. There's only a few things that they don't make.
So now there's a bunch of other watches in here that have different types of stories associated with them. I wanted to kind of focus on the ones that were backed by sort of a purchase process decision. But tell me a little bit about how you came about this Reverso 976, because this is a good fit for your wrist. It's one of the biggest Reversos ever.
Big.
And did you know going in that you wanted to have a display case back? Did you want a double dial Reverso, or you were? Because a lot of people buy their Reversos based on what they want the back of the watch to offer.
I know. Interesting. Being an airline pilot, and I was flying the 777, and I was doing pretty much Hong Kong, Sydney, Tokyo, London. And Hong Kong is the most amazing place if you're a watch nut. You can walk down Canton Road in Kowloon and hit at least 3 JLC boutiques, I believe. There's 5 in Hong Kong.
They've got
Rolex.
2 dueling Patek across the street from each other.
It is amazing. And at the end, by the where the Star Ferry is just this big old classic gray stone building with Richard Mille and Breguet and Blancpain. And for a while, I don't know if I didn't send you a picture, but the IWC, when the Spitfire was out, they had a full-size polished Spitfire mock-up sitting in the courtyard there, right next to the Patek Philippe boutique. I mean, it's watch nirvana. And I would just go in and try on watches. I bring fellow first officers with me, and we'd go try on watches. And we'd go into A. Lange & Söhne, and my buddy's trying on a double split and whatever. It's like, yeah, that watch is. The guy goes, oh yeah, that's a $240,000 watch. And it's like, you got to be kidding.
It's like, okay, reassess.
Reassess, But no one's in the boutiques. They'll talk to you for an hour, and they just love if you show interest and you love talking watches and let you talk on, take photos. Hot day, give you a glass of water to drink. So it was fun kind of going to Hong Kong, and that's where I really got to try on. London, Bond Street, Burlington, Arcade, all those places. And so I was doing JLC a lot. And I wasn't into the really small ones. And now I realize that the smaller JLC probably would fit better as far as a classic dress watch. And if I get another one, I would get a smaller one. But at the time, I'm like, no, I got this big wrist and big hands, and I've got to have, and people don't take into hand size, And I found this watch, and I'm in the JLC boutique on Bond Street. And we're trying on, and I said, do you have this watch that has a display case back? Because I love the case size, because golden ratio-wise, that case is the perfect 1.618 golden ratio numbers. Other ones are close, that one is perfect. And I love the display case back. I love the 3-hand, and I said, I can't, it's discontinued. So that was my first Chrono 24 purchase from a collector in Belgium. Worked out well. He had a GMT, loved my GMT. We emailed back and forth ad nauseum, and it was a fair price, and got it through Chrono 24, and
it doesn't hurt as a pilot that if you wanted to, it does feature a stepping hour hand.
It's got a stepping hour hand, which is great. Yeah. So, and being a designer who loves Art Deco and arts and crafts movement Art Deco, the only thing, if I had a solid case back watch, I'd like to have the art put on the back. And my favorite would be the N.C. Wyeth, my favorite illustrator, picture of Captain Nemo from Mysterious Island, which is a beautiful color picture of Captain Nemo in his throne chair on the back. But the watch is about $12,000, but the artwork would be 15 plus from GLC. So I said, I don't think so.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
But and it is great because the arts and crafts movement, which spanned the 19th century into the 1920s, kind of gave way to Art Nouveau, and then Art Nouveau existed concurrent with the emergence of the Art Deco that defined the Reverso. So you still have that design eye.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I love the classics. To me, I mean, if you're going to buy a watch, a classic design is,
There's a reason they've lasted.
Yeah, the reason they've lasted. I mean, people don't realize in '83, Rolex was a popular watch, and not $900 is a lot for a Submariner or a GMT in '83. It isn't crazy like it is now. And I keep telling people, it's just it's the internet, it's social media, it's the hype, it's this, and but they were very popular and prestigious watches, but they were a tool watch.
So let's play popcorn with some of your other collection, because we do have quite a few tool watches. that are fun horologically, but not necessarily pure luxury.
Yeah.
First of all, this is a 40-year-old still functioning Seiko multifunction chronograph alarm pulsometer. So if anyone tells you that your quartz Seiko isn't like an heirloom level product, keep in mind that this is older than his kid, and his kid's 37. So that's a great story right there, because a lot of people do have quartz Seikos.
Yeah, how I got this back in my collection when my dad passed. My brother Chris had lived at home for a while and had a couple old watches there. He had one of the old knockoff Datejusts, and he had this. And I say, Chris, that's the watch I gave you back in '82. He goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, it doesn't work anymore. The battery's dead. I tried to change it, doesn't work. And this reset knob had corroded. He'd gotten it wet. So I said, do you want that? He goes, I'm just going to throw it away. I said, you mind if I take it? I'll give you another watch, okay? And I got a nice Timex for him. And a couple of your salesmen that I'm friends with at Watchbox, they all go, Kurt, that Pulsemeter, that is just I just had this on Talking Time with Tim Monso. And the guy goes, that is the coolest watch I've seen in the last 3 months on Talking Time. Was this watch?
I'm inclined to agree, and so clearly your utilitarian streak runs strong through the collection. You've got the Sinn 104.
Oh, I love the Sinn 104.
You've got the Marathon Government Search and Rescue. And tell me about this, because a lot of folks who haven't been through the military aren't aware that this is still very much a thing in the modern era, and it's mechanical.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, that is still the government-issued military watch for the U.S., Canadian, and Israeli militaries, and maybe one or two others. And it's a Canadian company that's been around since the turn of the century, under Marathon since, I think, '39. They made watches in World War II. They have the current government contract. This is the government GSAR, Government Search and Rescue, USMC version, and it's licensed by the Marine Corps. So not only do I have the logo on the dial, I've got the printed Marines on the back, I have the bracelet that has the Marine Corps logo on it, which is very rare to get. But I just love it on, and I have the rubber strap, which smells like vanilla. So they're about $1,500 new, full retail. You can find old stock like I did with this for about under $1,000. I think I got this for about $1,000 with the bracelet.
Now it's a Swiss-made watch with a Swiss movement.
Yeah, it's a good. I think this has got an ETA, not the Solita, in it. It's a 2016 vintage. I got it in 19, I think. So it's been around a while. It's been like a display model, but the bezel action's amazing on it. It's got tritium tubes, and I love tritium tubes. Okay, because no matter what it is, in the middle of the night, when it's dark, you can read it.
Yeah, it's got the tritium tracers where you have a glass capsule, and then there is a luminescent material and radioactive tritium. So over time, they can actually replace the tracers as the tritium dies down.
Haven't been a Huey pilot flown search and rescue. I mean, it was a no-brainer. And then just looking at it, it's just functional beauty versus aesthetic beauty. This is functional beauty to me.
A very similar idea, but from a different country, Sinn of Frankfurt. It's a special watch too. It's the 104. Yeah. And it's very elemental, and it sort of nails what we love about pure tool watches.
Yep. And I love the Seikos with the day date. This has that. I love the bi-directional count down bezel versus the count up of a dive watch. Timing, for field or anything. 200 meters water resistant, captive bezel, Sinn quality. And I love the size.
A count down bezel.
Yeah, versus the count up. Yeah, and like I said, bidirectional. And I got into the hype like everybody else, but when I really looked at it, and then Watch Buys is just a great place. They're the online dealer, great customer service. Got it on the factory strap with the factory deployant. Had to pay extra for that. They charge a pretty penny for that, but it's great factory deployant. And then it's been living on. It came on a beautiful rubber, but it's been living on. That's a moose strap company, high-end NATO, and I love collecting compasses. I didn't bring it here. I have an old Seiko S&K 809 with the original military-style compass from I got in 76, 77 at OCS. So I love those little compasses on there.
And you haven't given up on Seiko either. You've got a heavily modded SKX 007.
So the classic SKX, but being a designer, I love the case, I love the hands, I love the dial. That's it. I hated the bracelet. I hated the bezel insert, the chapter ring misaligned. So I found a place in Singapore that has great watch mod parts. And I actually discovered watch modding through one of the checkout guys at my local Vons supermarket. he was a Seiko modder, and we're comparing watches. And I got one of my watches on, and I'm like, what's that? He goes, oh, that's a Seiko. I've modded it. And I'm like, that is cool. And he told me about a couple places. So I did all the research, found this place in Singapore, and was talking to him, and he goes, hey, Kurt, I have a partner here who uses my parts. He will build you a watch. So I ordered the watch through him, SNK 007, or SKX 007, and then he did the complete mods. So what it's got is it's got the case, the dial, and the hands. And those are the classics, okay? Because the Zoom is amazing. So it's got a Rolex-style deep-sea bezel. And I said, I don't need a dive watch. I need a dual time. So I got the dual time, which works great. This is my beater travel watch. It's still 200 meters. I got a stainless steel, just brushed chapter ring. So there go your alignment issues out the window, and it looks gorgeous. I got this beautiful, thick sapphire crystal. Okay.
And it looks the part. It really has like a sea dweller-like effect.
Yeah, it looks like a P01 too, a Tudor P01. And this strap coat Angus Jubilee bracelet is just the bomb. I mean, this is just a tank and just fits this heavy. This and my Sky-Dweller on the bracelet weigh 195 grams. They weigh almost identical.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And you know what? If I didn't know better, I would say the fit finish, the materials, it looks like a factory product.
Yeah. And that was the designer in me. That was a little of him. He had a couple that were kind of like this, and I modded a few things. And, it's 42.5 millimeters. And, I've got the wrist and hands to pull it off. And I actually have the NH36 and the crown. I just haven't changed them yet because, Seiko Shuffle.
And you've got, exactly. I mean, the fun thing here is you have everything from Seiko up to Parmigiani, JLC, and Rolex. So you've got a really versatile and deep collection. In terms of the variety, this is anything but monolithic. I would also say that it's interesting, you respect the classics, even among your utility watches. Glycine's an interesting pickup.
I discovered Glycine in early 19, and I'm like, where has this watch been all my life? Because I don't remember these being at the exchange. And when I found out the history of the Airman, I'm like, wow. And I'm like, do I really want to be beating this thing up again after I just spend a sizable chunk of money to have it, the case kind of cleaned up and the bezel insert, and over 40 years, the only way to maintain water resistance is to replace this acrylic crystal every single time. Okay, it's cheap. They don't cheap out.
Especially compared to the alternative.
So anyway, I went down the rabbit hole with the Airman, and I found this older base 22. This is a pre-Invicta, drilled lugs. That is only 11 millimeters thing, okay? It's got an ETA 2893-2, okay? It's 42 millimeters, it's 11 thin, 200 meters water resistance, and I'll take this, and this was my working tool watch in the 777, okay? Because right now it still has...
Just remind everyone out in the audience what that is.
Boeing 777, Queen of the Fleet, the big two-engine, the predecessor of the 787, which is a lesser...
A big, heavy, over-the-ocean hauler.
What's the max gross weight of a Boeing 777-300?
That's a great question.
It's obvious.
777, what is it?
777-300. 777,000 pounds.
Oh, I was going to say, that's interesting. I was going to guess 1 million, but I guess it's not quite that big. That's more like a 746.
It was Boeing just having fun, I think, but it's 700. The 300 is 777,000 pounds.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's an amazing airplane. But anyway,
I would imagine, by the way, your weights and measures for that must be a nightmare to use software.
No,
for that.
it's actually pretty easy because we have people that do that for us. When I flew corporate, I had to do all that nonsense.
I'm thinking, what a nightmare.
No. That's the great thing about being an airline pilot. All that stuff is done for you, so you can concentrate on the important stuff. Shiny side up and greasy side down, as we used to say. But what I love about the early Airmans were 24-hour hands only.
Almost like a quartermaster's
And I'm
watch.
used to that. I mean, it took, how many years, Nance, did it take to teach her military time? It's easy. Add or subtract 12, okay? It's not that hard, okay? But the guys still have problems with that. But what I love about the Airman, number one, is unlike the Rolex GMT-Master 2, where you have to move the bezel to get the third time zone, I've got London, Hong Kong, and LA time on this concurrently. So you read with the main hands, LA time, the very thin, elegant GMT hand reads on the dial, okay, London time, and then Hong Kong time is on the bezel. You don't have to move anything. I haven't adjusted this in 2.5 years since I retired. Because I still have friends in London and Hong Kong, so I just keep it there.
And you know, you do respect the classics, and this is a classic.
Yeah.
The Airman came out in 1953.
Yeah.
It was a pilot's watch from the beginning.
Exactly.
A year ahead of the GMT-Master.
And the hacking, I don't know, you remember how the hacking was on the early Airmen?
No, how did the hacking work?
A little pin came up, a little wire at 12 o'clock.
Physically block the movement.
It physically blocked the second hand. A friend of mine who's got a YouTube channel has a...
It's broad, it's flat,
one.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's an incredible aesthetic triumph,
Yeah,
considering it's
I mean, look at that
mostly
case.
functional.
Yeah, it's still got that original, and that second crown is just a locking bar for the just a unidirectional or bidirectional. And now take a look at the aesthetics of this and look at the 1655 Explorer 2, okay? And myself and a couple other well-known YouTubers all say Rolex may not have copied it, but they sure used that as inspiration for the 1655. And I agree with them.
You're going to steal from the best, right?
Yeah.
What does the future hold? Where do you go from here?
Well, like I said, virtual watch box. So I kind of look at when I turned down that FP Journe Centigraph, it allowed me to get my Submariner, okay, which I got, the Parmigiani and the Sky-Dweller, okay. So, Journe is still on the list, Longo is still on the list. I love your video on GMT World Time really got me into World Time. And to me, the ultimate pilot watch is a chronograph, flyback, GMT, or World Time. So, and I'm not big on maps on World Time, so the Gerard Perregaux 1966 WWTC, I absolutely adore that watch. It's simple, it's elegant. The Chopard travel time, great 40 millimeter watch. And my Grail Patek 5930P 001, green dial, green leather strap, platinum, flyback chronograph, beautiful World Time movement. But at 200,000 plus, have to wait on that one.
Speaking of waiting, how many hours do you have? What do you know how many total flight hours you have?
About 30,000.
So you've had a lot of time to think about
Yes.
this.
A lot of time in a 777 going to Hong Kong, 14 hours,
Now, if people want to find you on social media, where are you?
Instagram 1955 Healy 100, okay? And Talking Time with Tim Mosso under Austin Healy.
Curtis, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. All right.